It's Wednesday. It is Wednesday at 6:30 p.m., which everyone knows means it's Axon time. We've gotten in there just before the State of Origin's about to kick off this week. So I know everyone's sitting there going like, I can't wait for Queensland to go out and smash the Blues. But you've got just enough time to be able to fit Axon in here. So, Dane, how are you going, buddy? And Jane, very much a big welcome to you, buddy. Thanks for coming along.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Feeling good.
Ken Herman back on the throne, VIP number one, first in, first dressed from that perspective. So, mate, it's good to see. Now, for those of you who haven't been following this for a while and seeing this every single Wednesday night as we roll through this, it's a bit hit and miss. Sometimes you get these other two people that turn up, maybe like 50% of the time. They're the owners of the business, Robbie and Tamara. They're not here this evening. They've left us to our own devices to come up with whatever we want to talk about, right? And as always, the things that we want to talk about are the things that are the pressing questions for you guys as well. So I can already see there's a dozen or so of you there. Only 5 or so of you have said g'day. So Kent, Benny Hinton, Debbie, and there's a couple of comments from Axon. So hi to Noah in the background there. Bundle that up. So when you're one of those creepers who's sitting in the background, your job tonight is to ask that burning question that you have. Ask the question that you've had for the last few weeks. You've been sitting there going like, okay, I really want to ask this question, but I don't want to put myself out there. Let me reassure you that every single person here will probably appreciate the question that you put forward. So the challenge that I have for everybody tonight is to ask as many questions as you possibly can, spreading from the front of everything that you might see what Axon does, from the process, the risk, the finance, the locations, everything like that, right through until land settlement. And then Jano, our bloody industrious build support manager, has joined us this evening so we can talk in detail about what's going on in the sort of the broader construction process as we're going through as well, mate. So,
Noah, kick Margie out with that Go New South Wales that's come through. She can have a night off from the Q&A.
Nice, buddy. Keep her in there, mate. There you go. Benny Hinton signed the contracts this week. So daunting. Appreciative of the pros that checked it. How do people do it by themselves? Well, that's a bloody good question, mate. And you know what? I'm going to count that as a question. So can I just launch into it? Jane,
Yep.
I'm going to go to you first, Jane. Just if you haven't watched Jane's podcast on YouTube and you haven't listened to her podcast on any of the other bloody channels there, go back and listen to it, because she did have a life before she entered the property sector, obviously there. But Jane, you've been around real estate for ages. Like, just give everyone a quick little bit of a wrap there about what you've done in the industry, where you've been, what roles you've held, and sort of how you found yourself here today.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in real estate and construction for about 9 years, nearly 10 years. And I started out working for a marketing group, I wouldn't say similar to Axon, but we actually just marketed one builder. So I was basically started out as a contracts administrator. Mm-hmm. And then I went from there very, very quickly into a BDM role. So I was working with lots of different marketers to promote that particular builder's product. So I went from there, then went into a little bit of property management, and then into mainstream real estate, and then sort of landed my feet under the desk with Axon. So
good. That's good, mate. So the reason I wanted to jump to you with this question then is, Benny Hinton, like, you would have seen thousands of people, Jane, try and do it themselves.
Absolutely.
How does that normally work out? Like, just give us a snapshot of how people normally go through that process.
Look, I guess it can work out, but there's a lot that can go wrong in construction. There is a lot. There's lots of little. It's a very complicated, complex process. And if you don't know the ins and the outs, and you don't know the risks associated with it, how can you kind of avoid those from happening? How can you prevent, the inevitable shitstorm that could happen? Having someone like me on your side when it comes to actually going through construction, the actual construction phase of the build. So Benny, you're talking about the contract phase. So that's what the guys do. They go through and review everything and make sure that everything's that should be in the contract is in the contract. Now, when it comes to construction, that's why you've got us. So we can protect you from all sorts of things that can go wrong. So why would you do it on your own, I guess, is what it sort of comes down to in the end.
Absolutely. I don't know, guys. Have you guys got a glitch in your system, or is it just on Kerry's end?
It's on her end, man.
It's on her end. So that's good. Mate, it's a really good summary you're sort of giving us there, Jane, where you're like, well, you can do it yourself, in short, right?
Yeah, of course
But
you
it's just an acknowledgement that unless you've done it hundreds of times before, you're probably giving up some of the experience element.
Yeah, absolutely. And like there's stuff that is still even happening now. Like I'm 10 years in construction. I've also got a husband that works in construction. So, you know, being 10 years in and still I see situations every day that I may not have seen before, particularly with the industry the way that it is at the moment, with the delays that we're seeing and you know, the unprecedented times that we're dealing with right now. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I do want to wrap back around to that as well, because I think we'll let the chat warm up a little bit. I see there's a couple of questions that are launching in there already, but I do want to wrap back around to that, Jane, and talk about like just the state of the environment. And I'll probably bounce off both yourself and Dane and talk about, well, what's happening in the banking world. And then obviously I'll throw it to you to be able to give a bit of a snapshot of what's actually going on in the construction area at the moment as well. So that's a good one. Sorry, Dane, mate, we've gone for 5 minutes and I haven't let you say hello. How are you going?
Good, man. Good. Very good. I'm thinking just then I might just get the fuck out of here.
Hang out.
Go and warm up the couch, get the beers ready.
Mate, I thought you were sitting there in your solitary confinement again. You have 4 white walls all around you.
No decor.
Mate, that's it. Like there is some decor. I can slightly see like a fan just above you there, mate. So
bit of a light over which side? That side? Light over that side. It's funny that you do say that, Jane, about like people can do it themselves. And I always find what makes them do that. Are they, one, just trying to keep their expenditure down, or is it a pride thing? And they do it like, you know.
I just think some people don't know any better. I just think some people honestly don't know that there is the opportunity to work with people that are willing to go above and beyond and do everything for them. Like we bang on to our clients all the time. You know, we do a handover with them and like, if you can get to the end of the build and feel like you've got a house and you've done absolutely sweet FA for it, that's our whole goal. You know, but people might not know that we exist.
Well, people go in blind, right, I think, and they just sort of, you know, they're there and they're just going down the garden path, and suddenly they find themselves in predicaments where then they find they have a substandard conveyancer and they're not getting any responses, or they've signed up to something. One thing that I spoke to you about last week, Dan, which I always find funny, is these base price conveyancers who say, hey, yeah, sweet, well, you know, we'll do it for $800. And then every time you want to talk to us, I'll charge you $50. And if you want to send an email to anyone, I'll charge you another $50. And suddenly people are too scared to reach out to them because they're like, well, this thing can cost me anything, right? Because they haven't done their homework and they've tried to, I'll go in, I'll do something, I can get it pretty cheap. But realistically, like, it's a risk. But why have the risk? You need that support and the conveyance of being there. I don't know why you'd want to jeopardize that over $50.
Mate, it's one of those things. And I mean, Dan, you bought a few properties yourself before you even came across Axon. Like, what were some of the things that you found? Like, you've done it yourself. Like, what were some of the lessons you learnt yourself, and then what you sort of implement now?
Get a good building inspector. After my first one was building inspector, man. Like they have to be top notch, right? And lean on them. Like when you have like, you know, your building inspector, your conveyancer and so on, lean on them. Don't try and shortcut anything. Don't go for a base price thing. Have someone and ask, hey, tell me about what you will do for me. Like, can I reach out to you all the time? Will you assist me? Will you give me a review? Can I ring you up about that sort of stuff? Because the first time you go through, you want to be able to lean on people. And I think that's it. When you first sort of start, and the very first thing is losing your deposit is the biggest thing I always see. People go, oh, I've saved this money and I'm going to fucking safeguard it like anything else, right? And I go, man, all you're doing is transitioning it over to a better income stream. But they almost get possessive because they've sacrificed to get there. The opportunity cost where they're going, oh, we're going to go out on Friday night. No, we're going to save because we're saving for a house. And they get to that point where they're watching their dollars so much that when they go into that acquisition phase, that's what they're doing the whole time. Every time they're tunnel vision. I'm like, the big picture is the property and making sure it operates in the market and it's good. Trying a penny picture in the side because in the end it can come back and bite you. And I'm sure you've seen that too, Jane.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, well, that's why we work with someone amazing that you know, our clients can pick up the phone and call them. I can pick up this guy and call him and say, hey, what do you think of this? Like this defect showing up on this report. to me, it might look like nothing, or it might look like something major, and he'll go, no, actually it's within tolerances, or it's to standard. So yeah, like Dane, that was an absolutely vital point you just made there. Like building inspections is so important, and they're worth the $300 or whatever it might cost you. Like it's a no-brainer.
Easy. What about you, Dan? What do you reckon? You're an astute property investor, mate, along the way?
Yeah, like you pay for what you get. That's my summary. Like at the end, like people who are really diligent with money, right, and they're great at saving, they're really shit at spending, and they will. And I love my wife to bits, right? But I went to buy a new phone case the other day, and like I just went on the internet and I found the phone case I wanted. The first website that had it, I'm like about to buy, and she's like, whoa. Let me take that away now and go and find you that, and I'll get it at a discount. And she probably spent like an hour searching for it and saved $10 and all that sort of stuff. But for me, I'm like, I don't care. There's someone that's providing me that high level of service that's put it in front of me. It's ready to go. I know when it's going to get to me, everything like that. There's Wilco, buy cheap, buy twice. I never sacrifice on quality, mate. When it comes to project management, right, there's 3 pillars. You've got cost, time, and you've got quality. If you want to cut time away, you're going to pay more or you're going to reduce your quality. If you want to cut your quality away, you get it cheaper or you get it quicker. Like you can't have all 3 without having a little bit of patience in there as well. So, yeah, just don't be a tight ass, in short. That's probably my biggest summary about it. Like you pay for the experience or you pay for the experience by fucking it up.
Yeah, that's right. And you tell people that right up front too when they join us. It's like this is the costs that are going to be associated with you purchasing this property, and included in that is a building inspection, is a depreciation report, and is your insurances, and you have to pay for water and rates and all these things. So, you know, it's all. It's all
a part of it. It's just a part of it. You're a landowner. Like you're not going to sidestep this. The other one I'll sort of touch base on before, because I know we're going to wrap around to some of the stuff later, Dan, is also your finance structure. You find a lot of people are very rate focused, and they almost forgo having a more flexible finance structure that's going to suit them and their portfolio, because they're chasing, 0.001% cheaper at some fucking bank that you've never heard of. Like, it's not always about that. It's about having the flexibility that you can go and do splits and you can morph your loans and have all that sort of stuff, which is going to suit you. Like you're going to have this holistic approach. And I think too, if you don't, you get a good team around you and you sort of learn a lot from them, especially, with everyone at Axon, it's a no-brainer. But when you're there, just the guy driving down the highway, seeing these interest rates up on the board, that's all you think about, right? And then they don't think about offset accounts, redraw accounts, fixed term loans, like all that sort of stuff that goes with it. What stuff can you have it? Can you have a credit card with it? Can you not have a credit card with it? Like all those sort of things that come out of that finance structure, no one seems to care about.
Right. As long as it's the lowest rate, below 2% these days, unless it's that, you don't want to play with it, right? Like at the end of the day, some of those banks that are offering 2%, they don't even, the circumstances they're offering that rate for don't even suit you. So it's like when you're working with a top tier broker like Deb will be able to tell you exactly based on your circumstances what bank policy you fit. And it might not be a fucking bank that has a sub 2% loan rate for you. And guess what? That's just unlucky, because if you want the money or you get the rate, you can't have both in some of those instances. So you're absolutely right.
Absolutely. And using obviously good debt versus bad debt is another thing. I think people think like, I've got to save my deposit for my next property. I've just got to save away, back on the horse again. If you've already got a property that has equity in it, like if you can release that equity to go forth, like the interest is a tax deduction anyway. So it's by sort of knowing what's going to be better for me right now. Like what do I actually have equity-wise that I could use and I could salvage some of my cash realistically. So I think there's a lot of different facets, so it's hard to pinpoint one. But mine is the building inspector change after my first one.
Yeah.
Mine is the building inspector.
Yeah. It's massive. Yeah.
All right. Let's get into some questions, because I did ask people to ask questions earlier and we haven't even answered any of them, apart from Benny Hinton's half question, but we needed something that started there.
Was it Lukey Hughes?
Yeah, Lukey Hughes. Noah, can you bring up Lukey Hughes' one first? And you know what, Dane? I'm going to throw this one to you first, mate.
Yeah, man.
I
can't remember it.
That's all right. We've got it. No, not Sean Thomas's. Luke Hughes's, please. I'm going to come back to. So it was basically like, hey, I can see there that Axon doesn't seem to build duplexes. Wouldn't wouldn't the yields that you get from duplexes be higher? And why do or don't we? Dane, over to you.
There's nothing that says we don't, man. Like you're talking to a guy who I like duplexes. I'm living in one. You know what I mean? So, like, for example, the biggest thing I find is just price point entry. You know, like if you're there and saying, hey, look, we want to do a duplex, but the purchase price there at $800,000. Like we need to make sure that people are paying that, and that it suits their long-term planning as well and their goals there. It's definitely something that we haven't sat down at Axon HQ and said we will never, ever touch these things. It's just if it suits someone's portfolio, then, yeah, we would do it.
I guess if you're talking about true duplexes versus like an auxiliary or a dual occupancy too, they're different beasts as well. And my comment would be, I have a lot of experience with dual occupancies, not so much duplexes. So different beasts, but dual occupancy being on one title. And back in the day when they first became a thing, particularly in Logan City Council and Ipswich City Council areas, a lot of clients were sold these properties and they were put in them and they haven't gone up in value. So they've poured all their cash into this property and they actually can't go again. Yes, the yields are high and they might be getting, higher rent than what they would have been getting for a standard house, but they're stuck. And their properties are selling, like they're selling for less than what they paid for them. And I'm talking 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So
and location's a big one. You just touched on it then too, Jane. Like if you're there saying, oh man, I'm just going to get a duplex because I want the rental yield. If you're out in the middle of, God, heavens forbid, those locations you spoke about, imagine the sort of tenant you're going to be getting who can only rent half that house.
100%, yeah. And you find your tenants is a very high turnover too.
Yeah,
absolutely. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I think just to sort of wrap almost those two together, Jane, you're like, hey, most of the time when people go and get in the duplex market or in the dual lock market or whatever, when they're chasing those high yields, right? They don't then just acknowledge that it's going to be a shitload more expensive.
Yeah.
Like, because you can get a duplex or you can get a dual lock for the same price as you can get a land and build project, but you're just kissing goodbye to the location. That's all you're doing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it will give you great yields potentially, but you deal with dickhead tenants most of the time, to be perfectly honest. And you're dealing with a revolving door, and then you've got angst every 12 months, everything like that about that. But then it also comes down to the price point. Like, I would love to be able to, and for those of you, I love doing different projects, right? Like, there's nothing that would make me happier than if a client walked through the door with a few $100,000 and said, Dan, I'm ready to go. I want to find a block of land that is ready to go forward, be zoned for a duplex and build a double duplex, like build both halves of the duplex right there and get that sucker underway. But I tell you what, someone needs to turn up some dollary dues because it's not a cheap activity to undertake if you want to buy one in the right location.
Very true.
That's pretty much what it comes down to, Luke. So like, it's just a horses for courses, and it's a little bit more of an advanced stage that I would do it at if I was in your circumstance. It might be at a point in time when you're later on in your portfolio and you decide you want to restructure some of your capital growth that you've already earned, and you want to plug that sucker into a high yielding asset while you're, I don't know, going into retirement mode, for example, and you want to have just great cash flow in your life and you don't need as much capital growth because you can buy it outright.
There's an idea.
It's one of those things that there's always need to be an exit strategy in your portfolio. And if you aren't thinking about that now, then you probably start thinking about it a little bit too late. So it is what it is, right? Who else do we have there? I think let's go to Sean Thomas, because I'm going to ask this question of you, Jane. I think this one was aimed at you first off the bat here. Sham's come in and is like, ING lawyer's fee for substitution of security purpose, $4,000 comes off the advance. People don't see it or feel it because it comes off the advance. So I suppose what Sham's saying there is people hide fees where you're not going to see them and never going to feel them, and that you just realise 5 years later that you've just poured an extra $4,000 down the train. So, hi Jane. When inspecting building sites and progress overall, and you find something missed or wrong, how do you hold the builder and construction team accountable? Are you able to give case study example of past issues on site that you've been able to resolve? So actually, Sean's interviewing you right now for a new role in Sean Thomas Construction. But I don't. That's not a thing, obviously. But I suppose, Jane, I'll let you to launch into that. It's obviously a question poised directly for you.
It's definitely something that comes up very regularly. And it can be simple things like a builder will send out a claim. So sometimes we'll get, say, a fixing claim. Now, we know that for a fixing claim to be due, there's certain things and certain elements of the bill that have to be complete. If they're not, then we won't send that claim off to the client to be processed. That's the first thing. So you've got that protection. We had one fairly recent. Is someone getting feedback? Can you hear that? Okay. There was one recent. We actually went out to the site, and there was an issue. There were some changes that had happened in a plan that weren't conveyed to the client, and it was to do with something that happened in the bathroom. Now, we actually recognised that on site. It was to the point where to actually, can I go into more detail about this, Dan, or should I just keep?
Launch, mate. Go for it.
Okay, so originally there was supposed to be this big glass shower screen, and what actually got built was this nib wall in the bathroom and ensuite. It was sort of a half wall with a beautiful niche in there. It was considered an upgrade. However, the client in this case really didn't want that. We effectively went back to the builder and said, look, this client's not happy about this. What can we do here? We tried to sort of encourage the client to have an open mind about it, all the rest of it, not to convince them to go against what they wanted, but they felt strongly about it. So we had the nib walls removed to the cost of about $14,000 to the builder, and the builder actually just did it. So things like that, you know, we go to site regularly. We make sure that what has been in the contract is brought to site. I have a client that I'm taking over as we speak that is building their own home in a different state, and I'm actually prepared to travel there very regularly. Hey, Dan, and actually,
I'll get the credit card ready for you, mate.
Yeah, just to be there to make sure that I'm there at each stage and make sure that what this particular client wants to go into their home is going into their home. So. Yeah. Things like that, yeah. So we do hold the construction team accountable, and we have those relationships with our builders, and you know, all the office managers and the whole team. We have those relationships with these people, so we're able to go to them and say, look, we're not happy with this, we're not paying this claim, or you know, yeah. I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
What about you, Dane? You got anything else to add to that, buddy?
No. Second everything that Jane said. I think too, it's one thing if you're an outlier, I guess, and you're just going head to head with the builder. But if you're dealing with a team who has built up that relationship and they're looking at you as a collective and saying, you know, the Axon group, which have a lot of members and people who are building their forever homes and investment properties and so on and so forth, I think you'll find that moving in that pack holds a lot more weight as opposed to just some punter that's walking off the street and you're bitching about your PowerPoint height or something like that. So I think it's a lot different from that perspective, and shows the importance of having a team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even simple things like the location of PowerPoints and the type of lights that have gone in the property, like all those kind of things, you know, it matters to people and it matters to us. So we make sure that those things are done the way the client wants. So I don't know, Sean, if something has happened to make you ask that question, like that's a really good question, but I don't know. I feel like there's more to it.
Yeah, it's a both sort of a question. It's like, how do you hold them all accountable? Like at the end of the day, also, Sean, when all shit turns to Trump, so you've got this little old system up here called the QBCC in Queensland.
Absolutely, yeah.
Actually, Jake, can you just give, like, that might be a good one. Like, can you just run people through, if you have an issue, what like the process is normally with QBCC, please?
Yeah, so basically, if something has to go to QBCC, so say for example, you've got some kind of, you probably hear my kids, some kind of defect at the property, and it's not been fixed to the right standard, you can actually go to QBCC and they'll step in, they'll mediate with you and try to get things rectified. And that's another reason why building inspection is a really important tool as well, because if there's things on there and the builder says, no, there's these items on this report aren't a problem, you can then just go straight to QBCC and fight it out, like basically fight it out there. QBCC, they're to sort of protect your rights. So they're the ones that step in and make sure that shit gets done, really.
Absolutely, stepping in there to act on your behalf in your best interest, I suppose. So there's always that fallback position, I suppose, Sean, that if anything like ever goes down the wayside and doesn't get resolved, you've also got that as the sort of the backstop as well. So.
And FYI, that's never happened since I've been at Axon. We've never ever had to go to QBCC. We haven't.
No, we haven't. There was a good afterthought though, Jane. Like, I haven't had to deal with this in years.
No, I haven't. I haven't. Not for clients anyway. Maybe personally.
Sean, belter question, man. I'm certain that loads of people are sort of, as you go deeper and deeper in like where Jane's world is inside that build space, like you learn more and more and more and more and more as you keep going down the loop as well. There you go.
Another great question from Matthew Riley there for old Jano. They're all build questions. Perfect.
Good. Bring it
on. What's your structural warranty period in Queensland, Jane?
Is it 6 years? 25 years?
So the QBCC back one. So obviously you got basically your 7-year structural guarantee, Matt, as the state-backed one there, generally kicking off once the build starts there. So it's like by the time of build, I think by the time of completion of the build, it's like 6 years and 3 months of structural guarantee pending the contract. Some of the builders we operate with offer like a 25-year structural guarantee as well. So it almost
and there's also the 12-month maintenance warranty as well, which is a separate thing again. So that's something that is very, very important as well.
Yeah. When I'm thinking about properties, Matt, I think of it in 3 elements. I think of it in the 12-month builder's warranty. I think about it in my statutory warranties, and I think about it in my individual item warranties. Now, Natina, I did see you online there as well as a property manager. When you have a top shit property manager, they won't just be looking at your 12-month builder's warranty. They will also have your list of things that are brand new appliances and their warranty period associated with it, as well as any maintenance period that needs to be done to it. So garage door motor, for example, has a 3-year warranty from the manufacturer, but only if you get it inspected every 12 months. So when you're starting to think about managing your property yourself, ladies and gentlemen, you've got to do all of that shit as well. So just keep that in the back of your mind that it's not just about cashing the checks when you're a property manager. You've got to do the work associated with it as well.
Yep.
So
it's the same thing with aircon. So we've had a situation recently where an aircon had some issues, but the warranty was avoided because the client didn't have it, or the owner or the property manager, whoever was managing that property, didn't have it serviced every 12 months. So it was technically still under manufacturer's warranty, but it wasn't covered.
There she goes. Natina, straight in there. Air conditioners the same, getting it 12-month annual services. So when all of our clients, Benny, you would have got it, Luke, you would have got it, all of our clients that are in there, when you get your final pages of your property pack and it says, hey, man, set aside $500 worth of maintenance every year, it's not just as a buffer. It's like, go and get all those services, go get all those inspections, make sure you get that shit actually checked out every single 12 months as you need to manage your warranties as well. So that's good from that perspective. What else have we got out there? But it's first 30 minutes of fun. So who was the last one? Margie, even though you go for New South Wales, Margie Grunsul, there's a question from you there. Have you ever heard that a bank can make you pay out your other house loans first, then the remainder you can use? On Friday, we went to the bank to find out about selling one of our properties. And apparently, if we sell the property, the pre-sales must pay out the other houses first. It sounds like we've got there as well. So sounds like a bit of a mess, Margie, to be perfectly honest. And I think we've got Deb online tonight as well. So Debbie, if you're listening, feel free to chirp in the comments there, buddy, as well. You seen much of this, Dane?
Well, interesting enough, back probably post GFC, there was a fair bit of banks probably diving into people's portfolios more than they ever did before, because a lot of them were at risk. I haven't seen this for a long time, though, before that, where they would come in and try and let's say the same lender is linking them across and sees that if you have an upside down mortgage on the other one, it is a possibility.
Or if it's crossed up.
So that's a very interesting one, Margie. I'd love to have a chat to you about that, actually.
Yeah. And I think, Margaret, you would have heard us over the last few weeks where we've spoken about there you go, Luke Hughes, cross collateral mortgages. That's what I was talking about, being crossed up there. Cross securitization of mortgages takes away a little bit of the flexibility that you have in what your options are to be able to make your next move as well, mate. So without diving into exactly what the bank said, it gets hard to be able to give you a definitive answer about why the banks have decided you want to be able to do that. They said because I'm 58 years old, right? Well, when you think of the 4 C's of lending, one of which is the conditions of the loan. You've got to have employment. You've got to be of the right age, because people who are older definitely represent a higher risk value than someone who's 30 years old. Because someone who's 30 years old has 30 years of a working life to be able to go ahead and repay a mortgage. Someone who's 58 years old, respectfully, doesn't have 30 years to be able to pay off a mortgage anymore. So there'll be different rules for 58-year-olds, and the banks will be way more diligent with you as well. There you go. Deb, it may be cross-securitized when the LVR has to remain as it was written under. There you go. So there's probably 3 or 4 different reasons why those things might happen. But 58 years young from Kent Herman, my man, he's a young pup himself. I saw you out on the wheelbarrow over the weekend, mate, in those photos. Working hard, and it looks like Tash is certainly
in those footy shorts.
No, I wasn't looking at the photos quite as closely as you, obviously. But if you saw the footy shorts, then that's it. It's good to see that Tash has got you out there slugging away as well, buddy.
I think Tash is just as hard, just so you know.
Mate, if I know Tash, she's probably like putting Kent to shame regardless.
Got your back, Tash.
Yeah, there you go. What else is going on? I think when we first started this session, Jane, I said, hey, Jane, since you're here tonight, one of the things that I definitely want to give you the opportunity for, especially because we've got so many people going through the build process at the moment, is just to give a no shit, like, hey, this is where we're at in the construction industry. I'm sure it's going to invoke a lot of questions for those of you who are about to start a build. And I'm sure that Jane will be able to give you some context around it. But can you just give us like a quick snapshot, Jane, of like where we've been for the last 12 months, where it's sort of gotten to over the last 3 months, and where things seem to be heading now, please?
Yeah. So what we're seeing that has started to really affect the whole nationwide construction industry is a whole bunch of delays. And the delays are being caused by really 2 things. So supply issues of certain materials, things like timber. So your frames, we're having issues with frames, and also with trades. There's multiple reasons for this, one being COVID and the ability to actually get supplies from other places. 2 being insurance work. So we've had a lot of storm activity the last 12 months. And what that's meant is a lot of the roofers in particular have left new construction to go and do insurance work. Why wouldn't you? They're getting paid shitloads more to do it. So that's been a struggle. And then add to that the wonderful government offering people all this money to build new homes, which is fantastic. But it's just caused a massive surge in construction in Southeast or in Australia. And it's that everyone's so busy, like they just cannot get the trades, they cannot get the supplies. There's just shortages all over the place. So what we're seeing at the moment, and I haven't seen it, I have never seen this happen, is extension of times coming through from builders. Obviously they're doing the best they can to increase productivity and try to get over these delays the best they can in their best interest to get these houses built, But yeah, it's a real thing that we're seeing, and a lot of my clients, we're very, very transparent about this. We're very honest about what we know. There's a lot that we don't know. We don't know the extent of the delays yet. We've got properties that have got frames that are, we're seeing 42 delay extensions coming through, and we don't know if that's going to be the end of it yet. So it's unprecedented times, and it's I guess some people can get a little bit frustrated by it, but then you guys look at it with the silver lining that, the cost of construction's gone up, the cost of land's gone up. So even though things might be slowing down with your build at the moment, you've actually got you've kind of got a good story there. You've kind of got locked in yesterday's prices with your property. So by the time you're finished, you're going to be ahead of where people that are signing contracts now are anyway, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that your hubby's got your back there, mate. Builders don't want to delay your home. Like, that's the fundamental thing, right? It's not in a builder's best interest to be sitting there waiting for your house to be built. Like, as I've said to most of our builders, I'm like, man, I really am glad that I'm not a builder at the moment, because it is a really complex battle to be able to bring together all the material that, from a supply chain perspective, for all of you loggies that are out there listening today, like, it's a real challenge when you've got a disrupted supply line of materials that are coming through, and there's triple the amount of demand out there trying to get hold of one allocation of resources.
Exactly. Yeah.
It just means there's a huge amount of scarcity, right, Jane?
Oh, absolutely. And look, at the moment, what we're seeing is if a tradesperson, like, just to try and give you some context into why we can't just go and hire a new bricklayer or hire a new roofer or any kind of trade. One builder that we work with said to me a few months ago, he's like, Jane, if that tradesperson's out of work, there's a reason for that. So they don't want to
climate, absolutely right.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're a shit bricklayer and you haven't got work at the moment, we're not going to go and put you on one of our builders' jobs. Like, nah, you're out of work for a reason. It's because you're shit. So it's like we have. I guess for me, this is a big part of my job is making sure I communicate this stuff to our clients properly so that everyone's aware of what's going on. It is an issue. It's something that the whole industry Australia-wide is affected by it. And we really don't know the extent of it yet. But what we do know is, like my husband just said, he's obviously in there listening while he looks after our kids. Like he said, the builders don't want to delay the builds. They don't make any profit until the last couple of claims. So it's not like they're it's not like they're finishing, they're not claiming money unless it's due. And that money's already been spent because they're constructing your home. Yeah. Does that kind of make sense?
So it's like they don't make any money up front. They don't make money until like the last one or two stages, which is like when they're doing the fucking landscaping. Like, it's not when they're slapping your frame up, they're making buku dollars. Like, it's right at the back end.
Their margin does not come in until the end. Exactly. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. And they don't see that. So, they don't claim money for a stage that's not complete, and they can't, and they won't. We would never allow that anyway. And the guys that we work with would never intentionally try to do that. But it's interesting times. Like, I don't think it's all doom and gloom. I think it's actually, it's just different times. We're just having to manage things differently. We're seeing build timeframes, push out longer. Contracts that are coming through now, the actual build period is being put in as maybe 200 days instead of 160. Like, it's the reality of our industry.
Yeah. To be honest, Queensland's just catching up with the rest of Australia in the build times. And I think that we'll catch up with the build price of the rest of Australia as well, because for those of you who are like very Queensland centric when we talk about this stuff, because we're located in Queensland, I can't talk about the rules down in New South Wales all the time, right? But if you go down and you want to build a 200 odd square metre house down in New South Wales, like, the start price is $320,000 down there versus like $290,000, $285,000, $290,000 up here for the same equivalent product, right? So like, the price here in Queensland is already lower. It's just going to catch up to what it's been down south for the last 12 to 18 months. So for me, it's about those same three things I spoke about earlier, right? Quality, time, and cost. We've already fixed your cost. So you've got two options. You can accept a bit more time, or you can accept a little bit less quality. Up to you which one you want. But I know every single day of the week, I would maintain a high quality product and take a little bit longer, because I don't want a piece of shit built for me. Thank you very much.
Yep, absolutely.
What about you, Dane? You've been very quiet tonight, buddy.
Hey, no, I'm loving listening to that, because yes, I'm also in agreement. I know I'm just agreeing with you both tonight. Just an easy way out, but we've been spoiled. Like, let's be honest, Queensland has been spoiled with the build prices and stuff like that, and we're seeing a surge. Vals are still valuing, with the increased pricing and everything like that. So, which is a good representation of the market. And like Jane said, like, when I sort of spoke about nickel and diming, when you talk about conveyance and so on, it's the same with the builders. But you're going to push them over a week and then jeopardize like your asset for that. Like, it is the current environment. You just keep jumping the hurdles as they come to you, and you'll get a good product at the end of it. Like it's not nothing to fret about or anything. And the silver lining is the demand. The reason this is happening is because there's a demand. And the demand is what we want, because that's going to surge up capital growth. And on goes the story, right? We can't sit there and go like, oh, how dare the build prices go up? Like, mate, imagine if you're 3 years down the track, and you're going to be building a house then. You're going to be like going, oh, fuck, I should have built it 3 years ago, when I thought it was going up then. Like, that's the market, which is great. So.
I remember when I first started with Axon, and like it was probably about 2 years in. I was like, man, I used to be able to get a 200 square meter house in that same estate for this much. And then like a year later, it's like, now I can only get a 180 square meter house in that same estate for the same amount. And I'm like, this is bullshit. I used to be able to get way more. And then I'm like, hang on a minute. That's what we want. That is literally what you want when you're buying an investment property, is the value to go up. Like, the result is what we're after. And sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating when you can't get for your clients what you've previously been able to secure for other clients, because it just doesn't exist anymore. But those people who got in really early, they're pretty fucking stoked, aren't they?
Yeah. Yep. And if they're going to go forth and keep building their portfolio, that's what they need. They need properties that are growing.
Values go up, rent goes up. That's what they need.
That's exactly right.
Tis. Bloody, let's talk about this one. Opinion on Adelaide ranking most livable city in Australia. Who wants to have
you're just down there, mate. Aren't you sipping Shiraz?
Yeah, it's not sipping Shiraz down there. Actually, we might have had one bottle of Shiraz, maybe. Just maybe one.
Just one.
What do you reckon about that, Dane? You love talking about your locations in research.
Livable city, mate. That could be. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't particularly like Adelaide, because I used to hate going down to the rough base Edinburgh. And then a lot of time when I went down there, so my sister lives in Adelaide, and she bought a property that bomb dived, and ever since then I'm very, very cautious of going into Adelaide, same as I am with Perth, Darwin, Townsville, all those sort of locations where I'm like, well, it's good to have the surge, but you might have a plateau, but we don't want a big catastrophic drop is what we don't want, right? And then it's all sorts of trouble. So it could be most livable city, mate, but would I be putting my dollars in there for an investment property? No.
Tis hoping it helps out Mount Gambier. You're a little bit out of town there, buddy. Jano, do you like Adelaide?
Do you want to know something? I've actually never spent any time down there. I've been through there a couple of times, but I've literally never. So no, I don't.
Good news, Jenny. Sorry to all my Adelaide friends out there. Sorry to Julia. I know you're listening, but you haven't missed much, Jane. To be perfectly honest, I tell you what, she was bloody cool down there, and there was that sort of that Arctic blast was coming through, or the Antarctic blast was coming through, and it wasn't a lot of fun. But the things that I find is interesting about those surveys, right? This is what they base them on: stability, healthcare, education, culture, environment, and infrastructure. And it's like, well, yeah, I can see why you want some healthcare and some education there. But let's not forget about Adelaide. When they built their new $2 billion hospital, you couldn't even fucking drive an ambulance in there. It's like, you tell me how good their healthcare was when they did that. So no, I'm bashing Adelaide a little bit. I don't mind Adelaide, to be perfectly honest. It's another one of those. Hey, no, from an investment perspective. Bear with me. The only reason I don't like Adelaide as much as the East Coast capitals is because of the scale. The scale of the infrastructure spend that you get across on the East Coast, because of massive population shifts and growth, is just far and away higher than what it is over in Adelaide. It's one of those things that if you had things going back in there like massive defense drivers as well, you might start to consider it a little bit more. But more and more around Australia, they're looking at the alternatives as some of those bigger cities that can attract higher paying workforces from over in the international places with the skill sets you need in order to do those projects. They need to be able to branch out around Australia and make them more and more livable from that perspective. So, yeah, it's not bad. It just doesn't stack up from a scale perspective for me on Adelaide. There you go. Adelaide only got that rating because it's not overpopulated and laid back, which contributes to better pricing on some things. And it's not overpopulated because I think what's the size of the Westpac building over there, Julia? Is it the biggest building in Adelaide CBD is like 16 or is it 20 stories tall? So it's not going to be overpopulated from a density perspective when you got stuff like that capping the height on the CBD. But Matty Riley, Perth just above Brisbane. Just saying, mate. Yeah. I also love Perth. It's a great place.
Yeah. Good spot. Just far
one
away.
Of those things, man. You're like the Western version of Australia. I don't even know if you call yourself Australia anymore over there. You're normally creating your own Commonwealth and locking the rest of us out over there. So
they're smart.
DJ Wayne's got a good question there, Dan. What is the average time from EOY to land register?
Oh, that's
yeah. It's like depends. It's like
depends on the location.
CJ, super, very much depends. At the moment, like long gone are the days where you can submit an EOY on registered land. Like it used to be very normal pre-COVID times. Like if we'd been speaking 18 months ago, like it was a thing. You could submit an EOY on a registered block of land. You'd do the contracts. You'd proceed straight to your finance. But at the moment, in some of the most highly sought-after locations, I've got clients that are submitting EOYs for land that's ready in August next year. What's that now? That's only 14 months away, and it's kind of the norm. If you go down into New South Wales, some areas they're already starting to market stuff for October 2022 or January 2023.
That's insane to me because back when I was a BDM, I had builders that would not deal with a block of land unless it was registering within 3 months.
Yeah.
Within 90 days. So to hear that it's like, what would you say, 14 months off?
Yeah.
14 months off in Queensland for some estates, yep.
Yeah, that's yeah. It says a lot about what's going on with the land out there at the moment.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the benefits, obviously, in Queensland, CJs, you got once you submit, sign your contract in general terms here in Southeast Queensland, you can get away with hiding behind a finance clause until the land registers as well. So you can use that tool to your best disposal. So if something happens in your life between now and when land registers, then you can exit that contract under a finance clause. But if you go down to New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, all those other states, really, you've got to waive your finance clause in most circumstances at the time of signing your contract. Generally put down a 10% non-refundable deposit on that block of land and hope that in 18 months' time you can get your finance approved.
Different.
I think one of the and Nikki Otto's got it right there. It has suited some of our clients who are there still getting their deposit together. So being up in Queensland, being underneath that finance clause umbrella and being able to save those last few pennies to get yourself there is a no-brainer if you're able to take advantage of a better location. So it isn't all, doom and gloom from that perspective. There is another silver lining in that as well.
Yeah. For me, Dan, that kind of just means you need to start planning earlier. So it's like, okay, well, you don't wait until you've got your deposit fully set aside in your old Skyrocket. Like, what would you say is like the magic number in savings at the moment that people should be starting to put a plan together, like to secure a property?
And I reckon 35,000. Honestly, with the amount of time we've got out at the moment, if you're in that and you think, I'm ages away from it, you're really not. It's a completely different kettle of fish. If you want to hunt around on realestate.com, you're out there every Saturday with your fucking pack on, going to all these open homes, you've got to be ready to go right then, right? But with house and land, if you put your plan together and we're able to take advantage of those longer lead times, like we can really slot it all in together. And then once you actually get to that point where we are getting financed, you're good to go. So you don't have to wait, because if you wait until you save your deposit and then you go, all right, now I'll get in contact and I'll start, mate, you have to fucking wait enough, probably 18 months by then. So you put yourself back 18 months by doing that.
And you're also locking in at today's land prices too, aren't you? So if you sign that EOI today and it's still not registering for, let's even say 6 months, and we've seen what land prices are doing in that short space of time, you're still paying yesterday's prices. So in 6 months' time, that same block of land might be 30, 40 grand more. Like it's just, it's a no-brainer, I reckon.
You just sit back and you just go back to just saving your dollars and doing your thing, and you've got that thing, your foot on it, you know, like easy.
Yeah. So we actually, from one of our builders the other day, got a list of like, hey, this is the price of the blocks of land that were taken off the market in August last year compared to what's now for sale in like May this year, right? And we had clients that got in the back end of last year at this first release stage, right? And the land hasn't registered still. It still doesn't register for another 3 months. And that property that they've purchased is also already being sold for $25,000 to $30,000 more than what they bought it for. And that's from a $1,000 expression of interest that they've put down to be able to hold that sucker for like 12 months without doing anything. I don't know about you, but for the sake of being able to hold a property on $1,000 for 12 months, I'd do that every day of the week to get a 20 grand return.
$1,000 refundable too, FYI.
It's not too bad.
If you don't like the look of $20,000, you can walk out.
Yeah, and get your $1,000 back.
I want my $1,000.
Yeah. Julia, what are your thoughts on clients cycling back into another IP? Are you seeing quicker turnarounds on lodging EOI because of the registration times? What are you seeing, Jano? You've been in Axon like forever, and so you must now be starting to see like clients coming back around for at least second time, like repeat offenders, right?
Yeah, I've got one really one of my lovely clients that I'm doing there forever.
You were going to say favourite, weren't you? And then everyone was going to be in uproar. I thought I was Jane's favourite.
I can't do that because I have so many favourites. I like so many.
Said like a pure mother. I've got all my children are my favourites.
Oh, no, my kids know who my favourite is. Don't worry about that. It depends what day of the week it is and who's pissed me off the most that day. No, I'm seeing a lot of repeat offenders come through. And it's really exciting because for us, they go through the experience with us the first time. And they trust us pretty quickly because I think we know what we're talking about, and we give them that good experience. So to see them come around a second time, and for them to be even a little bit more confident in it, they're just like, yeah, you guys just do it. It's all good, easy peasy. But yeah, we've got heaps of repeat clients at the moment. It's great.
Oh, yeah. Mate. Look at this come in. So Kent and Tash said you assured them that we were your favourites.
It's exposed. Jane's exposed.
Jane's exposed. And you know what? Renee and Ruben are not going to be happy with you tomorrow. You know that.
You have to change that favourites template email you've got.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, look at it come in. Everyone wants to be Jane's favourite.
I know all my favourites, I promise.
Yeah. What are you seeing at the moment, Dane? What's the turnaround time?
Yeah, well, like with the market too, it's been pretty short for a lot of clients, which I've been quite amazed about. But the other thing is I want to point out, it's not always just about resting on your laurels and hoping your first property is doing well and going up and just letting that happen. It is what you did to get there, you got to keep doing. You got to keep those good money habits. I smack that fucking drum all day at work, all night, all day, all night. But you've got to, it just becomes second nature to you. So you're using a combination of that, and you'll be so surprised how far you'll get. And one day people will be looking at your work going, how the fuck how did they purchase all that? How did they get that? Because they don't know all the little 1%ers that you do and the back channel to get yourself in that. And they almost think you've got a shortcut or something like that. So you've got to do both. But yes, I'm seeing quite quickly people coming back around and taking advantage of those longer lead times as well.
Yeah. I'm seeing people too at the end, they're not even finished their first build with me, and they're like, oh, we want to talk to Dan. We want to talk to Dane. We want to go again. And it's like, all right. Like, and normally you guys will wait, at least until the tenants moved in before you're talking about the next property. But people are just so keen. Like, it's so good.
Yeah. I think it's really demonstrative of the time that we're in at the moment. Like for those people who aren't in the market at the moment, there's a lot of FOMO going around. For those that have already jumped into the market and they've got a bit of a taste over the last 6 to 12 months, they're like, oh, well, let's do that again. That was amazing, obviously. And the reason why is a lot of those people have experienced quite good capital growth over that period of time, right? So they might be like, okay, my property's gone up in value by $40,000 to $50,000 over that period of time. I should have some equity that's available to me to use that for my next property, right? But when it comes down to your ability to buy your next property, it's not just about your equity, i.e. your deposit and costs being available. It's also about your ability to service more debt as well. So for our singlies out there, like generally you max out at 2 properties, max. And then to like progress from there, you either need to pay down some debt, earn more money, or find a significant other, and then you can probably go and get another property together. But there's always going to be these ebbs and flows in your sort of your property investment acquisition timeline where you can't do anything. That's normal, because at that point in time, especially when interest rates are down at 2%, start removing some of your debt, liquidate some of that shit, or create other assets that pay you more income. That's the only way you're going to be able to overcome those challenges in the long term as well. There you go. Big Adam Harmey. He's like, yep, singly over here, 2 properties tapped out. That's the man. So, but
he'll change that soon, though, Adam. Eligible bachelor he is.
Hey? Are we putting Adam up? Is that what we're doing?
We're finding a wife.
We're finding his wife.
Harmey
is our singlest male in the team.
Put a photo up of yourself, Adam. Put a photo in the chat, mate.
He's in there commenting. We'll sort of pimp him out tonight, ladies. If you want to
kill me tomorrow,
ladies, just go and slide on into his DMs and see what happens.
Adam can become part of the success package for a couple of eligible young ladies.
Let's keep this moving. Absolutely. What have we got? We've got 4 minutes. What's been your favourite thing this week, Jane? What's been going on? What's made you happiest?
Well, everything makes me happy. I've been spending a fair bit of time out on site the last sort of couple of months. So I've enjoyed being back in the office, and I've got my wonderful new build support girl, Renee. So I've been busy training her, and the girls have actually been helpful with that as well. But I also, this afternoon on my way home, I listened to Jace's podcast, to his episode. So I listened to the rest of Shay's podcast. Bless her heart. She did really well. I know she was a bit nervous. But then I also listened to Jace's podcast, and he's just so fun to listen to. Like anyone who hasn't listened to it, go for it, because he's just a cracker.
I have been waiting for this podcast to be released for like ever since we recorded it. Like I walked out of there and I'm like, fuck it. You don't get anything better than that. It was a fucking ripper episode, wasn't it, Jane? So, mate, if you haven't gone and listened to it, first things first, listen to Jane's episode, which I think you episode 2 of season 2, Jane.
Yes, I think Simo was episode 1, and then me, and then Deb.
There you go. So season 2 is very much about getting to know a broader array of the crew. But when you do get down into Jace's conversation, there, it's a pretty interesting story, and we sort of get to go narrow and deep. And I think it's a really good preamble that everyone gets to listen to that over the next week or so, because everyone gets 1 week to listen to Axon podcast before they move on to the next one. But then we're going to probably get Jace on in the next couple of weeks as well. So we've been talking this up for the last few weeks now, so we'll definitely get Jace on in the lead up to tax time. So as Dane, you said it to me in the lift the other day, you're like, man, how good is it we can get an accountant or a financial advisor online? Like, it's not like, and now everyone pays $150 a head to turn up to this event. It's like a free accountant and financial advisor that you can just ask as many questions to as you want, right?
Yeah. He's a handy guy.
Well, costs a few $100, right? And you can get in here and you can ask all your questions for free. Absolute no-brainer. What about you, Dan? What was your highlight over the last week, mate? Considering we've got 60 seconds to roll.
Mate, 60 seconds to roll. Special shout out to Julia. We went down to Adelaide over the weekend. So on Sunday morning, I had Julia organised an event where we were doubled up with Soldier On as a support group down there. And we had about 30 individuals, maybe 15 or 20 families there, where we actually just sat down and spoke about their entitlements and what support is actually available to not just the defence members, but also their spouses as well. So, Julia, thank you for inviting us down to Adelaide. And then we followed that up with a session on Monday out up in the hills there with the crew from Woodside Barracks. So we sat down and had a roundtable discussion with those guys as well. So just getting out and about there, as cold as it was really nice to be able to speak to people face to face and just talk them through some of the challenges that they're having as individuals with getting the right knowledge and stuff out there as well. What about you, mate? We're 60 seconds over, so
I'll be real quick. Mine was not really Axon related. It was, but going out to Top Golf, mate. I'm thinking about joining the PGA Tour after smacking some out there and trying to buy some clubs, and that'll be my Axon exit plan, everyone. You'll see me on TV at that point in time.
You and Tiger will be back on tour at the same time as each other.
Back on then. All right, man.
Completely. All right, ladies and gents, thanks very much for an awesome session. There you go, Julia. Thanks very much for your feedback. All right, guys, we'll speak to you all later.